All right, so we're diving into color theory today, specifically for photography. You guys sent in a ton of requests for this, and I gotta say, after checking out this Sean Dalton YouTube video, I get it. This guy is intense about color.
Yeah, you could say he's kind of obsessed, but in a good way, right?
Well, he definitely makes you think about color differently, like way beyond just, oh, that's a pretty picture.
Right, he dives straight into the nitty-gritty, like, what IS color, really?
Yeah. He breaks down those basic terms we hear all the time, but maybe don't totally understand. Hue, saturation, and luminance. Like those sliders in Lightroom, we've all messed with them.
But Dalton connects them to real-world effects, which I like. Like, changing the hue isn't just picking a different color. It can totally change the mood of the whole photo.
So it's not just technical, it's emotional.
Exactly. And then there's saturation. That's how strong the color is, how much it pops. And luminance. That's basically how bright or dark it is.
Okay, so not just random sliders then, more like tools to manipulate the viewer?
You got it. And he's big on the fact that you can tweak those three things independently in Lightroom, like way more control than you'd think.
Okay, seeing the obsession now. He then gets into color temperature, which I feel like we kind of get instinctively right.
Right.
Warm sunset versus cool, shady forest, they feel different.
Absolutely. Dalton talks about how those warm colors, reds, oranges, yellows, they often make you feel energized, passionate, even comfy. But the cool colors like blues, greens, purples, those can be more calming, mysterious.
He even uses the word melancholy, right?
Yeah, he does. And the cool part is he doesn't just tell you this. He shows examples, like how photographers actually play UP those color temperatures that are already there in the scene, like making that sunset even more dramatic.
Or giving that nostalgic photo a vintage vibe by pushing the warm tones.
It's like he's saying, don't just snap the picture, think about the colors, use them to tell a story.
I admit, when he got the color space, my brain kind of went fuzzy. Technical stuff.
Yeah, it gets a little in the weeds. But basically, he explained that digital cameras use something called the RGB model to capture color. So they're recording red, green, and blue light.
And then there's that whole debate. Adobe RGB versus sRGB. One has more colors, sounds great, but...
But most screens are set up for sRGB, so you could end up with mismatched colors if you're not careful.
So shoot and export in sRGB, right? That's the takeaway, to make sure what I see on my screen is what everyone else sees.
Exactly. Consistency is key, especially when you're sharing online.
Makes total sense.
Yeah.
But then he takes it up another level, starts talking about color psychology, and this is where I'm like, whoa, okay, this is deep.
Yeah, he connects specific colors to, like, actual emotions they make you feel.
And he doesn't just list them off like a textbook. He shows how he uses this in his work. Warm tones for that nostalgic vibe, cool tones for moodiness.
Like, he's not just capturing what's there, he's shaping how you experience it through color.
Okay, now we're talking mood, feelings, storytelling. But how do we make sure our color choices actually look good together? That's where the color wheel comes in, right? For color harmony.
He uses it as a visual tool to explain the relationships between colors. Focuses on 3 harmonies that are super important for photographers.
Analogous harmony was the first one, where you use colors that are like next to each other on the wheel. He had this stunning sunrise photo from Bali, all blues, greens, and golds blending together.
And he points out we see that in nature all the time, right? So it feels right to our eyes.
Then there's monochromatic harmony. That's where you're using just one color, but playing with different brightness and saturation levels. He had a jungle sunrise, all these electric blues. Super striking.
Created this, like, otherworldly feeling just by sticking with one color.
And last but not least, complementary harmony, which is where you use colors opposite each other on the wheel. Blue and orange, red and green, you know, those classics.
Yeah, those create visual interest, contrast. Think bright orange subject against a cool blue background. He really dives into how you can make those complementary colors POP even more in Lightroom.
So it's not just finding those color relationships in the real world, it's knowing how to enhance them in post-processing.
Exactly. He shows how you can subtly shift hues, use masking techniques, all sorts of tricks to make that complementary relationship really sing.
All right, so we've got the basics down. Hue, saturation, luminance, color temperature, even color space and harmony. My brain's kind of full, but in the good way. Sure. But now I want to know, how do we actually do this? What are the Lightroom tools and techniques he uses to get these amazing color effects?
Well, that's where the real fun begins, and that's what we'll get into next. So where we left off, Dalton is all about Lightroom for finessing those colors. He actually prefers the color grading panel over those basic temperature and tint sliders.
Oh, interesting. What's so special about that panel?
It gives you like way more control. Instead of just making the whole image warmer or cooler, you can actually add different colors to the shadows, midtones, and highlights separately.
Whoa, okay, that's pretty granular. So it's more about like subtle shifts. Instead of just making the whole photo warmer, you could just warm up the highlights.
Yep, exactly. Like he uses it in that autumn scene to really bring out the warmth in the highlights and midtones. Adds to that cozy feeling. It's like instead of just adjusting the temperature, he's like painting with color.
I see, I see. He's also a big fan of those masking tools, right? Sounds like those are essential for like next level color editing.
Oh, absolutely. Like imagine you want to warm up someone's skin tone in a portrait, but you want to keep the background cool and serene. Masking lets you do that.
Oh, right, right. I've played around with masking a little bit, but it always seemed kind of intimidating.
Dalton actually shows you how to do it step by step. Like he uses a linear gradient mask on a sunrise photo to warm up the foreground, which then complements the cool tones of the sky. And he even uses masking to adjust the luminance values in certain areas to create more contrast.
So it's about using masking not just for color, but for brightness too.
Exactly. And the cool thing is he breaks it down in a way that makes it seem less scary.
That's good because honestly, with all this talk about color, I was starting to feel a little overwhelmed. Like, am I supposed to be spending hours tweaking every little detail?
Well, funny you should say that because Dalton actually talks about this phenomenon called color fatigue.
Color fatigue.
Yeah, like when you stare at a screen for too long and your eyes start to get tired and you can't really tell if the colors are right anymore.
Oh, tell me about it. I've definitely been there,
Right.
spent hours editing a photo, only to realize later that the colors were totally off.
Right. So Dalton emphasizes the importance of taking breaks. Step away from the computer, go for a walk, come back with fresh eyes.
Okay, that makes me feel a lot better. So it's not just about having the technical skills, it's about being aware of your own limitations.
Exactly. And being patient with the process. Dalton says he rarely edits the color in a photo all at once. He'll work on it for a bit, take a break, come back, and make more adjustments.
Okay, good, good. That makes it seem a lot less daunting. It sounds like he's encouraging us to like experiment and play around with color, not be afraid to try different things and see what happens.
Absolutely. He even says there are multiple ways to achieve the same look. Like, try out different tools and panels in Lightroom, see what works best for you. There's no one right way to do it.
So it's not about following a rigid set of rules. It's about using these tools as a starting point and then like seeing where your own creativity takes you.
Exactly. And he admits that sometimes getting that perfect look might involve using, like, multiple tools and techniques, maybe even combining different approaches.
Man, this is giving me so many ideas. I'm already thinking about photos in my portfolio that I could go back and re-edit.
I know, right? It's like you start to see color in a whole new light, literally.
Okay, so we've talked about tools, techniques, even color fatigue. But I feel like there's something else here, something even deeper that Dalton is trying to get across.
You're right. It's like he's not just teaching us how to use Lightroom. He's trying to get us to think differently about color itself, almost like it's a language.
A language. Now I'm really intrigued. Let's explore that a bit more.
Right.
Okay, so we've talked about all the technical stuff, tools, techniques, even color fatigue. But you said Dalton's trying to get us to think about color like it's, what, a language?
Yeah, it's like he wants us to see color as this powerful way to, I don't know, communicate, to tell a story with our photos. Not just make them look good, but make them mean something.
Okay, I'm with you so far. So how do we do that? Like, practically speaking, how do we use color to tell stories?
Well, he says before you even touch those Lightroom sliders, you got to ask yourself, how do I want this photo to feel? Like, what's the vibe?
All right, so are we going for, I don't know, warm and nostalgic? Or cool and mysterious?
Yeah.
Or something totally different? We got to decide that first.
Exactly. It's about intention, you know? Like, color isn't just an afterthought. You're choosing it on purpose to create a certain feeling in the viewer.
And I guess sometimes we get stuck on just making a photo pretty, but that might not always be the best way to tell the story, right?
He actually encourages us to, like, step outside our comfort zones, try different color palettes, even if they're unexpected. He's all about breaking the rules a little bit.
I like that. So how does he do this in his own work? Any examples?
Well, he talks about how sometimes to get a certain look, he'll use multiple tools in Lightroom. It's not just a one-click fix, you know?
Right. So it's more about being patient, trying different things, maybe some masking, adjusting hues, combining different techniques.
Yeah, it's a process. He has this one example in the video. He talks about editing a photo, taking a break, coming back to it, and realizing, oh, it needs more. It's like this constant back and forth.
So it's not just about the technical skill, it's also about intuition, right? And being willing to, like, experiment and see what happens.
Totally. And that's what I think makes Dalton so cool. He's not giving us a rule book. He's giving us permission to play.
To find our own style, to trust our gut. Man, this whole deep dive has been eye-opening.
Right. It's like color isn't just this thing we see. It's this tool we can use to make people feel something when they look at our photos.
That's a powerful idea. So if someone's listening to this, what's the one thing you want them to take away about color?
I think it's that we have more control than we realize. We can choose how people experience our photos through the colors we use.
It's like we're learning a new language, the language of color. And the more we practice, the better we get at telling our stories.
Exactly.
Well, this has been awesome. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into color theory, everyone. We've covered a lot, but honestly, this is just the tip of the iceberg. So go out there, experiment, have fun, and see what amazing images you can create. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.